While microgrids have been used for years in military installations, the technology is now being considered for various other remote locations where there is little energy infrastructure. Through various academic and government laboratories, microgrid technology continues to improve so that installations can be used to accommodate small towns and communities around the world. Academics and business leaders gathered at the 2012 Energy Africa Conference to discuss the future of microgrid implementation.
How do we provide electricity to the 600 million people in Africa who have no lights and no access to power? Much of that is going to be in a rural off-grid scenario, which is also limited by the access to markets. Many of the villages that I've worked in Africa, you're driving in an SUV, there's no paved roads, there's little finances.
The cost of bringing grid electricity to really remote areas is so prohibitive that everybody knows that it's never going to happen. So even if you look at a lot of the planning that's done now in Africa by the World Bank, they basically admit today that very large parts of those countries will never see grid electricity.
Talking about microgrids, what they are, the definition varies depending on who you talk to, but broadly they are based into two major segments. One is what would be called a retrofit and the other is a greenfield. A retrofit-based microgrid would be a simple example, could be something like a solar panel installed on somebody's home, and so they have generation capacity. But the exciting piece and the new and emerging piece of technology within microgrid is this greenfield space where you are now creating a grid where nothing existed. And so there was no grid, there was no electricity, there was no energy, and now you're creating a source of energy generation.
So we can power up 60 kilowatt. With 60 kilowatts, we can power up a town of 2,500 people. The entire cost of the whole thing is less than $250,000. It's very cheap, and it probably take less than 4 months to do the whole thing. So speed of deployment is revolutionary. If you talk about grid power, conventional grid power, you need to bring a regular grid to a place, it can take years. We can do it in 4 to 5 months.
One technology, whether it's solar and in their case biomass, where they're generating power and providing it to somebody who perhaps did not have power, or providing it to somebody in a cheaper way than the grid might, or actually displacing another kind of grid which may just be a plain and simple generator.
There's a certain school of thought that says that, well, you know, Africa can in some way bypass the formation of an electric grid, the sort that we've had to build here, and they built in Europe, and they built in China, and they built everywhere else in the world, much in the way they've bypassed wired telephony. And I'm not a subscriber to that school of thought. They concentrate the trained human capacity that you need to operate a generating system and a distribution system in a fairly compact way. And so you're not operating microgrids all over the place. You take their own management, their own engineers.
Sometimes there's not even a screwdriver to actually make repairs on the system. And so that's one thing most people forget, is that they provide the system but no tools to actually repair the system.
The ability to provide energy to a remote location where if you had to run transmission lines, it could cost literally millions and millions of dollars, but you could then provide a microgrid for a fraction of that cost and not have to spend money on that infrastructure, is kind of what's driving this growth in microgrid, in greenfield microgrids, where nothing existed nothing existed simply because it was too costly to hook them up with the grid to begin with. And so microgrids bring the appropriate solution in that regard.